Hi everyone. Today we're going to be reading If I Ran the Zoo by Dr. Seuss. It's a pretty good zoo, said young Gerald McGrew, and the fellow who runs it seems proud of it too. But if I ran the zoo, said young Gerald McGrew, I'd make a few changes, that's what I'd do. The lions and tigers and that kind of stuff they have up here now are not quite good enough. You see things like these in just any old zoo. They're awfully old-fashioned. I want something new. So I'd open each cage, I'd unlock every pen, let the animals go and start over again. And somehow or other, I think I could find some beast of a much more unusual kind. The 4-footed lion's not much of a beast. The one in my zoo will have 10 feet at least. 5 legs on the left, 5 more on the right. Then people will stare and they'll say, what a sight. This zookeeper, new keeper Gerald's quite keen. That's the gold darnest lion I've ever seen. My new zoo, McGrew Zoo, will make people talk. My new zoo, McGrew Zoo, will make people gawk at the strangest odd creatures that ever did walk. I'll get for my zoo a new sort of a hen, who roosts in another hen's topknot, and then another one roosts in the topknot of his, and another in his, and another in his, and so forth and upward and onward, gee whiz. But that's just a start. I'll do better than that. They'll see me the next day in my zookeeper's hat, coming into my zoo with an elephant cat. They'll be so surprised they'll all swallow their gum. They'll ask, when they see my strange animals come, where do you suppose he gets things like that from? His animals all have such very odd faces. I'll bet he must hunt them in rather odd places. And that's what I'll do, said young Gerald McGrew. If you want to catch beasts you don't see every day, you have to go to places quite out of the way. You have to go to places no others can get to. You have to get cold and you have to get wet, too. Up past the North Pole where the frozen winds squeal, I'll go and I'll hunt in my Skeagol-mobile and bring back a family of what do you know? And that's how my new zoo, McGrew Zoo, will grow. I'll hunt in the mountains of Zomba-Ma-Tant with helpers who all wear their eyes aslant, and capture a fine fluffy bird called the bustard, who only eats custard with sauce made of mustard, and also a very fine beast called the flustered, who only eats mustard with sauce made of custard. I'll catch them in caves and I'll catch them in brooks. I'll catch them in crannies and I'll catch them in nooks that you don't read about in geography books. I'll catch them in countries that no one can spell, like the country of Mont-Fa-Pot-Fa-Pel. In a country like that, if a hunter is clever, he'll hunt up some beasts that you never saw ever. I'll load up 5 boats with families of jotes, whose feet are like cows but wear squirrel skin coats, and sit down like dogs and have voices like goats. Excepting they can't sing the very high notes. And then I'll go to the wilds of Nantucket and capture a family of lunks in a bucket. Then people will say, now I like that boy heaps. His new zoo, McGrew Zoo, is growing by leaps. He captures them wild and he captures them meek. He captures them slim and he captures them sleek. What do you suppose he will capture next week? I'll capture one tiny, I'll capture one cute. I'll capture a deer that no hunter would shoot. A deer that's so nice he would sleep in your bed if it weren't for those horns he had on his head. And speaking of horns that are just a bit queer, I'll bring back a very odd family of deer. A father, a mother, two sisters, a brother, whose horns are connected from one to the other, whose horns are so mixed they can't tell them apart, can't tell where they end, and can't tell where they start. Each deer's mighty puzzled. He's never found yet if his horns are hers or the other way around. I'll capture them fat and I'll capture them scrawny. I'll capture a scragglefoot mulligatawny, a high-stepping animal fast as the wind from the blistering sands of the deserts of Sind. This beast is the beast that the brave chieftains ride when they want to go fast to find some place to hide. A mulligatawny is fine for my zoo, and so is a chieftain. I'll bring one back too. In the far western part of southeast North Dakota lives a very fine animal called the iota. I'll capture one who is even much finer in the northeastern west part of South Carolina. When people see him, they will say, "Now by thunder, this new zoo, McGrew Zoo, is really a wonder." Most beasts are quite friendly, but still, in some lands, some beasts are too dangerous to catch with bare hands. For those that are ugly and vicious and mean, I'll build a bad animal catching machine. It's rather expensive to build such a kit, but with it a hunter can never get bit. A zoo should have bugs, so I'll capture a thurl, whose legs are snarled up in a terrible snarl. And then I'll go out and capture some chugs, some keen shooter, mean shooter, bean shooter bugs. I'll go to the African island of Yurka and bring back a drizzle-topped tuft mazurka, a kind of canary with quite a tall throat. His neck is so long, if he swallows an oat for breakfast the first day of April, they say, it has to go down such a long way that it gets to his stomach the 15th of May. I'll bag a big bug who is very surprising, a feller who has a propeller for rising, and zooming round making cross-country hops from Texas to Boston with only 2 stops. Now that sort of thing for a bug is just tops. And then, when I've caught him, then the next thing you know, I'll go and capture a wild tic-tac-toe, with X's that win and zeros that lose. He'll look mighty good in this zoo of McGrews. I'll bring back a gusset, a gherkin, a gasket, and also a gooch from the wilds of Nantasket. And 8 Persian princes will carry the basket, but what their names are, I don't know, so don't ask it. In a cave in Khartoum lives a beast called the Natch, that no other hunter's been able to catch. He's hidden for years in his cave with a pout, and no one's been able to make him come out. But I'll coax him out with a wonderful meal that's cooked by my cooks in my cooker-mobile. Then they'll fix it up in a dish that is just to his taste, 3 chicken croquettes made of library paste, then sprinkled with peanut shucks, pickled and spiced, then baked at 600 degrees, and then iced. It's mighty hard cooking to cook up such feast, but that's how the new zoo, McGrew Zoo, gets beasts. I'll go to the faraway mountains of Topsk, near the river of Nopsk, and I'll bring back an Opsk, a sort of a kind of a thingamabox, who only eats rhubarb and corn on the Kopsks. Then people will flock to my zoo in a Mopsk. McGrew, they will say, does such wonderful jobsk. He hunts with such vim and he hunts with such vigor. His new zoo, McGrew Zoo, gets bigger and bigger. And speaking of birds, there's the Russian Palutsky, whose headski is redski and belly is blueski. I'll get one of them for my Zooski McGrewski. Then the whole town will gasp, why this boy never sleeps. No keeper before ever kept what he keeps. And there's no telling what the young fellow will do. And then, just to show them, I'll sail to Katru and bring back an Ichka, a Preep, and a Prue, a Nurgle, a Nerd, and a Seersucker too. I'll hunt in the jungles of Hippo-no-Hungus and bring back a flock of wild Bebo-Bogungus. The Bebo-no-Bungus from Hippo-no-Hungus are better than those down in Dippo-no-Dungus, and smarter than those in Nippo-no-Nungus, and that's why I'll catch them in Hippo-no-Hungus, instead of those others in Nungus and Dungus, and people will say when they see these bips bounding, this new keeper simply astounding. He travels so far that you'd think he would drop. When do you suppose this young fellow will stop? Stop? Well, I should, but I won't stop until I've captured the Fizza, my Wizza, and my Dill, the world's biggest bird from the island of Gwark, who only eats pine trees and spits out the bark. And boy, when I get him back home to my park, the whole world will say young McGrew's made his mark. He's built a zoo better than Noah's whole ark. These wonderful, marvelous beasts that he chooses have made him the greatest of all the McGrewses. Wow, they'll all cheer. What this zoo must be worth, it's the gold darnest zoo on the face of the earth. Thanks for listening, guys.